a pretty good video, actually, about Keir Starmer's ouster, and somehow it made it across the pond. At least one commenter appeared to be a native Britain, Mr. Matthew Orton, though unfortunately he deleted his comment, or maybe it got hidden because he was kind of a jerk at the top. But we had a decent little back and forth, and I kind of thought it deserved a little attention what he was talking about, right? And specifically, we'll say from Matthew Orton. I asked him what it was about my previous video that he said was not it was not factually accurate. This Lowe report, it was just fake. And so I had to ask him, like, what part of it's fake? Look who it is. It's Esteemed Hams. He's here right at the top. Right at the top. That's how you know it's going to be a good show. But anyway, he said. So I asked him what about the report was fake, and he says, the entire so-called investigation, it was made up by a number of racist UKIP counselor made years gone now, and this racist has decided to try and make it out as true. And I'm like, wow, that's a pretty big claim. So I ask him, what about the victim testimonies? What about the FOIA documents? Were those all fabricated? And he says, oh, absolutely. It's all absolutely fake. And he says, look up Malcolm Pearson. I'll see what I need to know, right? And he links me a little article about Malcolm Pearson from The Canary. And apparently, the Canary, they don't really exactly hide their biases. They call the Lowe report a mockery. I was under the impression we were believing all women, right? And I mean, the Lowe report does have testimonies from many, many women involved in the abuse. 250,000 total is what the Lowe report indicates. But I am not allergic to information. I needed to find out, what's the counterfactual on this? Because obviously this has made a huge splash. So I did my own little investigation into this Malcolm Pearson character, right? And so he's in what was it, the House of Lords? Yeah, okay. So he had a little stay in the House of Lords, and then he was a member of UKIP. He was the leader of the party in 2009 and 2010. And then from 2019 onward, he sat in Parliament as an independent. So I mean, he was a supporter of Brexit. He was Eurosceptic, and yeah, exactly. And this Hams is already in here with a very thoughtful comment, right? If the government statistics can't be trusted, as the UK's proven, the burden of proof shifts to them, that they have a responsibility to disprove what's in Lowe's report. And Lowe's report does make claims that basically they've been systemically covering up this human trafficking for young British girls. Sorry, I have to be very careful about what language I use because of the various platforms that this gets posted on. But Rupert Lowe's report says 250,000 young British women, usually around the ages of 16 or 17, that were trafficked within the UK and across the UK over some decades, going back as early as the 1950s, but then in the late 90s, early 2000s, it really spun out of control, right? So that 250,000 figure does link back to Pearson's original report. And so the way that they derived this figure is that they were looking at the report, the J report on Rotherham, which was about 1,400 victims. And through some scientific method that's in the report, they're using sample sizes of different places, and that's how they get to that 250,000 girl figure. The first thing I want to say before we really dive into this, imagine that it was just 50,000. Just say they inflated the number by 200,000 people. Is it acceptable for your own government to help hide the sexual abuse of 50,000 women for some equity and acceptance, that they're worried about the narrative, so that they must hide this from the public. And so unfortunately those 50,000 women, we just have to suppress that story or incentivize the families not to come forward. And the answer is, of course not. Even if the numbers were flipped fivefold, even if they exaggerated by 5 times the amount, that would still be unacceptable. Now, going back to that Pearson report, he said that 250,000 was a conservative estimate. The way that he characterized that figure was that that was basically it was an undercount. It wasn't a precise count because the British state had failed to record it. And that was intentional on their part. If they're able to find 1,400 cases, and in some of the most prominent cases, 4,000, then how can you say, if that's what you're able to find on the record, and they are trying to suppress the records, then it would stand to reason that maybe 250,000 is not unbelievable, or maybe could be an undercount. I mean, it's as simple as that. And more importantly, about the survivor testimonies and the other evidence, right? Some of these people, because this was a third party, this was not the British government. They didn't have the ability to compel people to make testimonies. So a lot of people made these testimonies anonymously. However, there were a number of women who came forward under their own names, right? And there's been no attempt at all to try and disprove their claims, or to otherwise say that they were false, that they were being untruthful, or that they weren't at the places that they claimed that they were at. So really, when it comes down to it, it seems to me that in what Mr. Orton was saying in his comments, and I want to reiterate, I do appreciate the people's willingness to come forward with criticism, especially, I mean, that goes double, triple, or quadruple for anybody who attaches their own name to that. On these inflammatory topics, a lot of people are just happy to goes double, triple, or quadruple for anybody who attaches their own name to that. On these inflammatory topics, a lot of people are just happy to, that says a lot about a person's fortitude. So, regardless of the fact that me and Mr. Orton clearly disagree. But that being said, the methodology that they use, right? They're using elements of prior reports. They're using statistical studies and analysis so that way they can extrapolate to that 250,000 figure. But again, Pearson's original suggestion was that it could be as many as 1 million people. Now, for all of this, in Orton's original, his pushback that he provided, he says, well, just look at this UKIP guy. He's clearly a racist, right? But that you see, that's the problem, right? Is because that doesn't really work anymore. I mean, you know what? Maybe I've never spoken to this Pearson guy, this parliamentarian. Maybe he is. Maybe he is a huge racist. I mean, maybe, his characterization of the Muslim religion or all of this other stuff, maybe that was racist of him to suggest that it's part of their doctrine. But there is also a thing called pattern recognition. And just simply calling him a racist or calling him partisan isn't actually a counter argument. You have to actually, refute his claims, because that's what nobody's been doing, including the Canary article that Orton linked to me. Okay, so maybe this is a awful, angry, mean guy who is totally xenophobic and hates immigrants. You have to actually disprove what he said. Unfortunately, the thing is, a person who sees things through a certain lens is probably going to have a hard time being able to analyze data in a clear-sighted way, in a way that is actually relevant to a conversation. This is an unpopular opinion, right? But I say this about the Israel stuff all the time, the Israel derangement syndrome. And it goes both ways, whether you're anti-Israel or whether you're super pro-Israel in every situation. If you are constantly examining everything through that lens, you are going to have an incredibly difficult time like being able to analyze what is actually happening. And it's going to be even more difficult because you have that clouded judgment about what's happening right now. It's going to be even more difficult to predict what happens next. And so, I mean, there's a lot of fair criticism of this Pearson guy. If he's this, if he's a racist or whatever, clearly that's going to cloud his judgment. If that's true, it should be even more difficult to disprove his report or the report that Lowe put out, right? It's as simple as that. If they're truly as awful and cloudy-eyed as you say, then this really shouldn't be much of a task. At least that's the way I see it. But the fact that nobody's willing or able to do that, nobody says, oh, well, these are the documents he claimed they got from FOIA, but you can't prove that they're fabricated. Right, exactly. Miyazaki, to see the world with eyes unclouded by hate. That right there, it's important for great story writing. And Esteemed Hams, always with the great quotes. I don't know if he just has these things like already loaded or if he like looks them up during the show, but either way, it's appreciated. But yeah, you have to be able to look at these things rationally if you want to be able to examine what's going on. And that goes into the next guy, right? Because a lot of people say, oh, well, this was just a smear job on Starmer, that Starmer had done all this good stuff for working class Brits and the government had had enough, so they allowed him to get caught in this crossfire, with Lowe suggesting that he was part of the cover-up, which, I mean, Keir Starmer was in charge of social services at the time that these things were occurring. So in at least in that way, he is culpable. But Andy Burnham, right? This guy is this is going to be the next prime minister of the UK. And he's a British Labour politician, so same party as Starmer, obviously, same way if you impeach or get rid of the president, then the vice president obviously is going to be somebody of the same party. And this was actually a thing early on in Trump's presidency, when people were saying that something may happen to the president, or when people talk about impeachment, they say, well, then look who you got next. It's Vance. And they say the same thing about Abigail Spanberger. If we do a recall, look who's on deck right behind this woman. It's like it's impeachment insurance. That's what they say, right? So anyway, this guy, he's supposedly even more dyed-in-the-wool than Starmer. Starmer at least has incentive to pretend to be somewhat moderate, and where this Burnham guy, not Burgum, I keep saying Burgum, this Burnham guy is even more dyed-in-the-wool. He's just going to go full tilt on everything. In the last couple months, apparently, Starmer actually did moderate some on immigration, but not well enough, apparently, because Labour lost a bunch of their elect efforts in this recent round of elections. So reform is like surging, which it might have been why Labour just said, you know what, just let him go. Like, let him know that we're gonna let him take the fall for this one. So you got to, you just got to step down. You got to hand it over to this other guy. Sorry about your luck. And people are saying that that basically this what is happening right now is a controlled demolition of the Labour Party. Right now, Europe, the UK, is in an economic freefall. I mean, you think that we feel it here in the US, these things like inflation, right? But they're about to get it so much worse in the UK because they don't have the same energy autonomy the way that the US does. In this Iran war, I've been saying for weeks now that they have been hit hardest by the Strait closing, and now all of their U.S. energy exports are going way up. They're getting more and more and more of their energy from the United States as a result of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. We even saw the IEA had said that that they were just a few weeks from being totally out of gas, literally, that they were going to have to start grounding domestic flights and canceling cargo planes, and they were going to have to go to rationing. They were able to narrowly avoid this because of the way that, the Trump admin had kind of handled some of these ceasefires, the way that they were getting barrels out of the strait even during the shutdown. So now The UK is in an economic crisis right now, and an oil crisis especially. Which was funny because Trump's tweet had actually indicated that the main reason that Starmer was stepping down was because of his energy policy. And in part, I mean, I'm looking at some of the criticisms of Starmer over his tenureship. One of them was that he had done some stuff with gas over the like holidays over the winter, that his winter fuel payment cuts, that they hit the pensions really hard. This is just, whatever you say. I mean, maybe it actually was energy policy, like, and this was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I've been saying for weeks, if London runs out of gas, I mean, that would actually probably ruin someone's political career. So maybe the president was onto something. Still, color me skeptical. I think that this scandal was probably way worse. But yeah, no shape to be taking on charity cases. Exactly. And this was what it really came down to. Immigration remained a major voter concern without clear resolution. Everything, every single thing, and I say this all the time, they have, like, the entire West. Yeah, exactly. The North Sea oil. I mean, it has a lot to do with it. This clearly was, this was the straw that broke the camel's back. But so much of these issues do have to do with immigration, including energy usage. But you have housing problems in the UK because it's an island. There is a finite land mass, and you're trying to import all of these people. You're driving up the cost of housing incredibly. Young people can't possibly stay in the UK to inherit that economy if they can't even afford to stay there. And we can't get young people to work. Yeah, because their wages suck. Because you have an endless line of people ready to replace them. There was one simple thing that needed to be done, and they absolutely refuse to do it, which is the same thing we see with the Democrat Party in the U.S. in so many ways. It's like if there was one issue, you could compromise on one single issue, and you could keep your government subsidized health care and your government subsidies for Planned Parenthood. You could probably get back at USAID, and the only thing that you need to do is compromise on this one issue. Just one issue. Just give up the immigration thing. You say, you know what? Actually, we are closing the border. Forget the visas. We're locking it down for a decade. If you had a Democrat that was willing to do that, they might actually get a decent run. And yet they're unwilling to do that. So somehow with the president, with historically low approval ratings, the lowest he's ever seen since he took office in 2016, and somehow the Democrats as an entire party, they are still running behind the president in approval rating. It's outstanding. It's insane. But alas, and I've said this twice now, the Democrats have lost the most winnable election of all time to Donald Trump. Twice. They just cannot reorient their party. And it's kind of a sad thing, to be honest. I used to be kind of a lib. I still get, you can look in the comments of any of my videos, I still get called a lib all the time. But like, things have gotten so crazy. The Overton window has shifted so far that I don't have a home there anymore. So I'm just eating in the camp where I find myself sitting. It is what it is. But right, Democrats, I remember Bernie Sanders said that it was a Koch brothers proposal. Open borders was a Koch brothers proposal. That it was the Republicans who wanted open borders because it was better for businesses. And something about that switched. Like, something about that just switched over. And now it seems, I don't know, maybe the parties do switch. Maybe it just happens all the time. They're constantly left, right switching. But no, I don't know. So just to wrap up my point earlier, Mr. Orton, somebody's drinking the tea, right? Either I'm steeped in American propaganda that's anti-Starmer, or perhaps he is steeped in domestic propaganda, which one of us has open and free internet and the other one doesn't, right? If this video did find him in the UK, anybody like him who saw it and agreed with me is unable to comment because, like, they could very well find themselves in jail. So I don't know. It's a one-way street, these comments from from Britain, right? But alas, interesting developments on the Virginia budget. Speaking of Britain and their first colony in America, yeah, just fast forward a few hundred years, and here we are narrowly avoiding the first government shutdown, at least at this time. Governor Abigail Spanberger still has the opportunity to make vetoes to the legislation, so they are still able to fumble this at the 1 yard line. So let's not get too excited, right? Great news on the when the Senate got a hold and they made a reconciliation and released that budget for it needs to sit. I think it's for what, like 48 hours, 72 hours before the governor's allowed to sign it. They did take out that election audit information. So who knows? Maybe it was never going to stay in there, or maybe videos like the ones that you guys liked and shared, perhaps that was motivation for the Democrats in our state Senate and our House to remove the provision that allows for an audit of campaign finance reports. However, those campaign finance audits are supposed to happen within 180 days of the election. And at this time, not a single one has been published, right? Those are all still ongoing. And so I looked into it. I mean, because 180 days, I mean, that means we should have them in another month, right? Nope, not true. Because of the number of transactions, the independent commission says that we should have it by the end of this year. So that's not 180 days. So they've already moved the goalposts, right? That these audits are ongoing. Now, if that had made its way into the budget, if that independent commission had been disbanded for the election audits, then we actually never would have seen the result of the audit. It would have been destroyed. So we wouldn't get to see the partial audit. It would just be gone, right? So that means if they say by the end of 2026, well, then we've got 6 months to see that come out as some form of legislation. So now, unfortunately, that's the thing about winning, like on a small victory like this, is that now we have to wait, because this one's going to sneak its way back in. It's going to slip through the cracks. Too many people are looking at the budget. Too many people are liking and sharing the videos. They know that their fraud is going to be hung out in the open. So now they got to try and sneak it past the window. But yeah, Virginia is quickly becoming the new California. And like they are competing with California to have even worse policy. But right now, what we're looking at is, let's see, the proposed budget. Sorry, I had notes on this last one, right? Because the RGGI withholding, right? We're looking at a new change to RGGI, and this is a fun one. So this is the credit that any power plants are forced to buy a carbon offset credit, meaning that when they produce power, they have to go to an auction held by an NGO, and they get to buy at auction an offset credit for the amount of kilowatt hours that they've produced. Now, it used to be that credit, that money, would go into a couple different programs. Let me pull those up. That was the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and let's see. I had these. Give me 1 second. Yeah, resilience projects, including flood-prone Hampton roads. And then we would also buy the... Sorry, I apologize. I wasn't fully versed in these, so I have to like pull the stuff up so I don't spread misinformation. So we were getting the Community Flood Preparedness Fund. We were funding that. And then the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. So yeah, it was split those two ways, right? So we used the money from the power plants for the Save the Bay project, basically. So plenty of blue crabs and plenty of oysters for everyone. And then we basically had it as an additional flood insurance for the people living in Cape Charles and other places, Hampton Roads especially. Which, if you've ever been down to Hampton Roads, not Hampton, but Hampton Roads, I mean, those are, I don't know. Don't shoot the messenger. Some of these people, they got some money going around. But anyway, so now under the new RGGI withholding changes, we're now going to take 50% of that money, and that is going to go to low-income energy efficiency programs. And so 45% still going to go to the Community Flood Preparedness Fund, and then a small percentage, like 5%, is going to go to administrative costs. So that 50%, that low-income energy efficiency program, what they're going to do is they're going to reissue that as a bill credit. So you will see that as a line item on your bill. And when I say you, I don't actually mean you, because there's no clear language right now that says that this is going to be redistributed equitably. We do know that it won't be redistributed to data centers. So at least there's that, if that's a pet issue for you that you take very seriously. Then that money will not go to large businesses, including data centers. However, that rebate, that offset, is going to go to, drum roll please, here we go, shown as a bill credits for residential, small general service, and church classes. So we don't know if region by region this is going to be even, but they are taking money out of your power bill. So your power bill will go up to pay for RGGI, and then they will distribute it back to you, but also to like small businesses and to church classes. And this will be distributed on a per kilowatt hour basis, meaning that you will get more money back the more energy you use, as long as you are in one of those classes in one of those areas that is receiving the credit. So larger houses will get more credit back. Smaller businesses will get more credit back. And they're apparently trying to target like less efficient low income areas. I don't know, dude. This is kind of whack, but all of this to say, like, why? Like, I still don't understand how this is so hard to come along. Data centers use so much power. They are checkbooks out, wanting to generate their own power on site, which would, not for nothing, which would generate a ton of jobs by these places. Like, if you all of a sudden now you have to staff your own power plant, you'll have a boom for electricians and instrument techs. You will have a boom for these trade working jobs, which are great jobs for people who don't have the financial resources to go to like a conventional college, right? So this is a great opportunity for lower income people, or at least people who don't have exactly that same financial backing, for fantastic jobs. Dozens, 1,500 acres for dozens of jobs. I know it's like just for instance, though, Loudoun County is one of the richest counties in the country, which makes it one of the richest counties in the world. And like 50% of their local taxes are covered by data centers, right? And don't shoot the messenger here. I'm just playing devil's advocate, right? That is a lot of money for local taxes, and that's even with the retail sales and use tax exemption. But, right, well, exactly. It predates the data center boom because it's like the hub of the internet for the U.S., basically. But these jobs are important jobs to the people who are working them, and it gets people an opportunity to get out of where they are. But if you have a data center that's generating its own power, on a scale of how much power these places use, You could supply the entire town or the entire county with power from the data center, and it would basically amount to a rounding error. In most of the places where these data centers exist, they are using 9 or 10 times as much power as the next closest town to them. You could eliminate the power bill for those people completely. See, I'm not saying it's a perfect solution, right? Because I hate seeing our beautiful forests and all of these things getting traded for more and more, bigger and bigger, and more industrial. To an extent, that does make me kind of sad, right? Everybody likes the idea of like Yellowstone or whatever. Like, we're not going to sell the family farm. But what we can do is we can have a meaningful way of structuring this agreement where it actually does benefit the people that live close by in the form of new jobs and like better opportunities, in the form of free power, in updating their water infrastructure and that kind of thing. Because otherwise, if we don't update our power infrastructure, if we don't update our water infrastructure, then we're going to have to pay for it ourselves later. And these are incredibly difficult things. And if there's no industry to attract people there, then those costs just compound on fewer and fewer people there to pay it. Now, this goes to the very last point about the new budget. There was a data center compromise, right? Because Senator Lucas stood on business. She actually released this compromise initially. They're going to tax data centers per kilowatt hour for their energy consumption, capped at $600 million per year. They want to study the impacts and this and that, blah, blah, blah. Basically, they're taxing them like per generator that they're using on site, so to incentivize them to move away from these loud, noisy generators. I have to say, it seems a little self-defeating, right? The tax is higher, the less efficient that those generators are. So if you successfully get them not to use the generator, then you no longer get your $600 million. And then because you're pushing them back onto the grid, am I wrong in saying, isn't that just going to make the price problem worse? Like, I could be wrong, but I'm just riffing here. Like, if you push them off of the noisy generators because now you're taxing them for using the generators, all you're going to do is raise the power bill. So the people are going to be like, so what? I either have to live next to a jet engine or my power bill like triples. This is like not a fair situation. So at best, you're going to recover a little less than half of the retail sales and use tax. But if your new tax is successful, then you actually won't recover any of it. It just seems like this seems like a plan that's made up by bureaucrats, right? I don't know. That's just me. Right, exactly. So I don't know. Yeah. So I don't know how we have these problems. If you have an internet attack, I mean, what happened? The internet attack 3 years ago has the Colonial gas line shut down. You mean to tell me we don't know how to fix it? Like after 3 years, like did it blow up the gas pumps? Like, can we just replace them and maybe get back to that? Or are there just too many EPA regulations to be able to do that? I'm trying to follow here. Maybe I'm not in the weeds on that particular issue well enough, I guess. But no, so then beyond the data center compromise, right? To try and recover like half of the lost money, which isn't actually half and is actually just going to strain the grid further and then get even less money. No, I mean, I'm familiar. Like SCADA is like, very old technology, and it's built on the backs of very old systems, like 20-year-old PLCs that only require you hook up with an Ethernet cable. I mean, they are susceptible to attack. It's as simple as that. Don't even get me started on E1s. Anyway, sorry. Now we're in the weeds. We don't have to talk about my job anymore. Now, we also have 4% annual raises for teachers over the next 2 years. So, also hundreds of $1 million for school construction, special education, high poverty schools. I don't know how to tell anybody this. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but We spend more money per student in the US than any other country on the probably. I don't know. Yeah, probably. Except for we're not really getting the results regardless of how much or little we pay them. So maybe we just kind of have to shake the whole system up. We have tons of co-ops all over the state. There are plenty of private schools. There are so many opportunities that you can improve this system without dumping more money into it, because we've already done plenty of that. Recreational marijuana can begin on July 1st, 2027. There are limits on licenses. There's a 6 to 8% state tax, and revenue is directed towards equity, education, and health programs. I don't know how to tell you this. Everything already smells like weed, and it's not even legal. Like, literally everywhere you go, you can drive down the interstate. And it is so frequent that it actually annoys my wife when I point it out now. Like, we'll be driving down the interstate. I'll have my kids in the car, and the next thing you know, like, you're driving behind. You'd think that this story is like me driving behind a Nissan Altima, but it's not. I'll be driving behind a Mercedes. I'll be driving behind a Lexus. I can be driving by. It doesn't even matter what kind of car it is. A Toyota Highlander, and then you're like, and it's like, dude, what are we doing? Like, what is going on? Like, this person's clearly like smoking weed, driving down the interstate, doing the most dangerous activity. This is the most dangerous activity you will do in a day, and you'll do it every single day. If there's a one thing you do that could probably kill you every single day, it is getting behind the wheel of a car. Do not smoke weed and drive. We need to throw people you do that could probably kill you every single day. It is getting behind the wheel of a car. Do not smoke weed and drive. We need to throw people in prison for that. like, I'm sorry. But yeah, so recreational marijuana, I can't wait for it to get way worse before it gets way worse. That's awesome. That's just great. And don't get me wrong, dude. Like, I mean, like, if you like smoking weed, that's fine. Like, do it at home. Do it on the porch. Except I don't really like going outside my own house and it smells like weed. You know what I mean? I don't really like that either. Like, can we used to have a system where weed was illegal, and when people would smoke it, they'd do the old, like, paper towel roll stuff with dryer sheets. Like, you couldn't smell it. People were still smoking, but you never walked around and smelled it. Can we, like, get back, like, can we make the recreational marijuana laws like, hey, you still have to pretend it's illegal? Like, I'm willing to take that compromise. If you want to smoke weed at home and blow the smoke out through the dryer sheet paper towel thing or whatever, like, I don't really care, I guess. Like, but don't be driving down the road doing that. And I really don't want it to stink like a dispensary on my front porch. Like, that's all I ask. Yeah, exactly. Like, a couple times, maybe once or twice a year, maybe once every 5 years, you just want to take a little gummy. And, that's fine with me. I get it. Some people like to have a beer after work. Some people are like hitting a giant dab pen and giving themselves psychosis. It's all the same thing, right? Like, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah. Exactly. It's like a treat if you pretend it's illegal. Like, if you just do it like it's a treat, like, you go outside, you hide under your back porch or whatever, and, like, it'll feel like an adventure, maybe. Yeah. Anyway, so we have that to look forward to. Yeah. I'm skeptical. The budget, like I said, the governor still has the opportunity to make amendments and vetoes and send it back to the House and Senate so they can finally ratify this thing. They're saying the Senate and the House are saying that they are keeping their Monday open. So they are expecting the governor to have some kind of amendment, probably the one that's written between the lines that says we really need to fix up that campaign finance thing before those audits are complete. But yeah. Anyway, we'll see what happens next. I mean, it's been it's been a good weekend. I hope anybody enjoyed their Father's Day. I know I did. I tried to focus on spending time with family. That was definitely the right decision. I had a ton of fun. We went to Yorktown Beach. It was fantastic. Also, I got to get this off my chest, right? So we're hanging at Yorktown Beach, and it was a really nice day. We were there for like a couple hours. My wife's cousin met up with us. We were just having a good time, right? Had our whole little, we have a beach compound. It's like a tent and a canvas. When we're on the beach, we are chilling. We're there for the long haul. We know how to have fun on the beach for multiple hours with nobody getting upset. And like right around the time where we've had enough, like our kids clearly need a nap, like they're kind of rivered out a little bit. And then we're like getting ready to pack up. And there are these two girls that had been walking around in their, bikinis or whatever. And I'm not a prude, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say that they were too revealing or whatever. But like next thing you know, like in front of my infant son, these girls are like clearly posing for their OnlyFans in the water. Not just my kid. There's like other people with their kids like in the background. I'm like, dude, this is a family beach. This is like you're not in the remote whatever. You're like not even away. Like, I'm sorry, like, can we maybe make digital hookering like not legal anymore? Speaking of things that are already a problem, when like now that they're legal, they're way worse. Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I saw from whence he came. Jeez. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like if the swimsuit had been any smaller, then yeah. And it's just like, dude, like, I'm not one, like, if a girl's just walking around the beach or whatever, I understand, like, that's just the style or whatever. But I'm sorry, like, no, like, this is completely unacceptable. Meanwhile, there's a family right next to us who called EMS, like, a cop came over because their kid got stung by a jellyfish. And a cop comes over. It's like, oh, I'll get EMS over here. And they bring in EMS. I'm like, there's my tax dollars hard at work. That we're telling a little girl, okay, if your kid cries over getting stung by a jellyfish, you just have to tell them, if it's that bad, I'm going to pee on you. That's the only way to make it stop. You'll find out real quick how bad it is. It's never that bad. But anyway, so the police and EMS are involved for the jellyfish sting, but we have the hookers that are sitting here doing whatever on the beach and nothing. Not a word. Cops still standing right there. I'm sorry. This is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. You can do exactly what you're doing from the comfort of your own home on Instagram. You don't need to go to the family beach and do it. I think I successfully made it negative enough, but I think I earned it. I ended it on a positive note twice last week. So anyway, I'm always here for you. You're not always here for me unless you're esteemed hams, but there's no need to feel bad. There's no need to feel bad. If you hear this, and if you hear this and you do feel bad, then just go ahead and tell your coworkers about it. Hey, I think you'd really like this guy. If you can't catch it live on TikTok, you can find him on Facebook or Rumble or YouTube. He posts all of the live shows there, and he'll still read your comments, especially if your name's Matthew Orton. And he will be nice about, tearing you apart. And that's it. So anyway, thank you all for stopping by. I hope you all have a good night. I'll see you all tomorrow.